So I think I left off talking about Joan Wagnon and my appointment to the Metropolitan Planning Commission. Because during my tenure, the College Hill Neighborhood Program came up. And there was this young planner named Bill Fyander, I think, who was presenting the whole plan. He and I got into an argument about integrating retail into this project. And I said, well, and I'm thinking about Aggieville, you know, right by the college. But I did argue with him about it, got a little more retail, a little more C2 zoning put into the project. And, but that was really the day I decided that would be a fun project to work on, because Washburn being so important to our community, there's nothing more important today than the education of our children. But also too, if I go back to my Macerich roots, we developed a lot of projects in college towns. You know, there was a time that progressive was good. You know, more action in a college town, more stuff going on, vibrant. Developing College Hill in this community was just definitely a nightmare. And one of the things that that was really kind of embarrassing. Now, I did ask Dana Kay if he'd do the deal with me. And so much of the deal had a housing component and so little retail, he didn't really have any interest in it. But he did introduce me to Doug Compton. Oh, look at this guy. Sporting a nice flower. Gotta love that guy. So, Doug Compton is the largest, at this time, he was the largest landlord of student housing in Lawrence and Manhattan. He's a general contractor, hard worker. A friend of mine, Brett Blackburn, had done a lot of work for Doug and spoke highly of him at the time. So I met him at a KU football game up in the suites where the muckety mucks go. I think at the time Doug's suite was right next door to Dana Kay's. And next thing you know, I'm meeting with his partner, Bill Newsom and Steve Roth. And those guys were brought in by our financial partner, Bob Chase, whose family was in the banking business in New York. But Bob, at the time, had sold a museum, and his assets were way north of $500 million just from that sale. From what I understand. I never got to look at his financial statement. I just never was, I was on a need-to-know basis on that. So here we are right here. This is the house of cards I want to knock over. Number one, downtown Topeka shouldn't be up there. Downtown Topeka ought to be in a humble space. Visit Topeka shouldn't be there because they ought to be really officing out of the expo center and running it. Go Topeka shouldn't be there because it's time to pivot. And I don't really care what the chamber does with their money, but I want to make sure, I'm going to make sure with a core request that the city and county money aren't donating any money, not a nickel, to the chamber. I don't want to give my tax dollars to the government and have them decide who to be charitable with. Charity starts at home. The minute the government starts being charitable, it's greasing somebody else's pockets. That's why the money that Molly Howie gives away today is just greasing the pockets. It's buying favoritism. Whoa, you can't be mad at Go Topeka, Henry. They gave $2,500 to bring back the boulevard. Well, Bring Back the Boulevard puts up a sign on our property out on Topeka Boulevard. Improvements brought to you by Bring Back the Boulevard. Bullshit. I've never even met anybody with Bring Back the Boulevard. And we sure as hell never got any money from them. But if you can take a step back and dissect that for a minute, the irony of how things are run and what they do, they get it all convoluted. And that is why we need to do something in writing along with an organized documentary because Topeka's run by the ghosts of Topeka. The ghosts of Topeka still, some of the literal ghosts, you know, the people that hand down their money, the generational wealth. You know, when you're born on third base, you've got a whole different attitude than us street people. These guys left too early. The Miniger boys. That's Walt. Tell by the bow tie. The Miniger Foundation is really an interesting component to the ghosts of Topeka. Rosemary Miniger would be an interesting person to interview for an article. That's Dr. Carl's daughter. I've met her several times. She's a very talented artist. There's a ghost story I'll tell you sometime, but not now. But if you go look at College Hill, it was a $25 million personal investment, private side, and we've got $6 million in TIF bonds, and $4.5 million was allocated of the neighborhood CIP. So it's over a $36 million project. And what was so easy about this project was Tom Ellis, Jerry Farley's right-hand man at Washburn, they shared their housing study. Now that guy you shouldn't have crossed, meaning, get that tag number. Just kidding. So they did this big housing study, shared the study with me. When I turned it over to Bill Newsom, Steve Roth, and Doug Compton, they read it. And basically the plan was implementable, and with the TIF financing, it became feasible. But for that, it would never have happened. And it never was going to happen without the city backing the bonds with their full faith and credit. You've got to have skin in the game. You've got to have your public partner invested in it. So look, if you're not going to help the thing be successful, well, you're going to pay later. And we did with the shortfall in the TIF bonds. But they were the worst. Well, they were bad. They weren't the worst partners I've ever had. But they weren't good. From a construction standpoint, and how we structured the utilities, because on a project like that, you've got to get all of them broke down to individual. Everybody pays their own water, electrical, gas, whatever. You got to have, if you've got everybody paying their own utilities, it promotes conservatism. You'll turn the light off at night. You will make sure the toilet isn't running. You know, you can take an hour-long shower, but you're going to pay for the water. So if you drill down deep, and Neil Dobler was really good. At this time, he's interim city manager, and he moved over from Public Works. He understood where we were trying to go with all the separate metering. But there's some things they did. The Jerry's Bike Shop thing was really the abomination. Because like my whole gig with Macerich was to go find the Jerry Morgans of the world and make deals with them. But this guy was so, it became a matter of principle. He fell on the sword over principle. Because we could have gave him $400,000 relocated his store over to Brady Robb's project in Brookwood. He would have been on the bike path over there. We would have completely paid to relocate him, turnkey. But Jerry wanted to hold us hostage And this is where the legislature made a bad move on taking away condemnation for economic development. Eminent domain. Hell, my grandfather, Clifford Bantleon, in Edwardsville, he got back after the Depression when the turnpike went through his farm. Condemnation can be your friend. He actually succeeded from it twice in his life. That aside, we never did use condemnation, but we had to sue Jerry Morgan so he would allow us to get, now listen up, we had to sue Jerry Morgan so we could get in and fix the sewer. This is, emphasize that. We had to sue Jerry Morgan to get in to fix the sewer. Now the city could have enforced the code violation and made him remove the Johnny on the job. And the Johnny on the job was his way of putting the middle finger up at the developer, which here's really the wildest thing about this whole thing. We all signed the development agreement together. Washburn Lane Renovations LLC, Jerry Morgan, in the city of Topeka. It was a private-public partnership. Jerry had a vested interest in making sure that this project succeeded. He has an equal amount of burden now for its failure. And he held it back. And this is the same time Vic Miller made us go through the TIF process the second time. On this note, I'm going to stop and take the call.